Hello, my name is Brett Yanofsky.
And I'm Austin Morales, and you're watching The Inner Gamer On.
And today we're going to be talking about a recent article that came out with Shawn Layden, the former boss of PlayStation, in which he says that the current AAA growth is unsustainable. And we just want to know what happens next. How do they fix it? Will they increase prices? Will we see games getting smaller? Do we just give in and just pay more money with microtransactions? I don't really know, but we're going to talk all about it right here. Have a nice little discussion. Please let us know what you think in the comments. Like, subscribe, follow, etc., 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 etc.
And as always, if you like this content, please like, subscribe, and bang that bell, because we know you want to. Ain't that right, Brett?
Yep, that's right. Each week, we dive into a hot topic about video games, and this week, we're going to talk about the AAA gaming space. Specifically, is the current AAA growth of video games sustainable? A recent article came out on IGN with a conversation with the PlayStation boss, Shawn Layden, former PlayStation boss, Shawn Layden. He put up a case about how the scale and scope of AAA games today is unsustainable and could cause issues for the future of the industry. In this article where he was talking with gamesindustry.biz, he mentioned most recently a discussion on The Last of Us Part 2, and that this is a game that during his 25-year tenure was approximately 10 hours longer than the previous game, more technologically advanced, and likely cost a substantial amount to develop more, but still cost $59.99. So that's kind of the baseline for what he was talking about. And he goes on to state that the problem with that model is it's just not sustainable. He explained that current generation development costs reach between $80 million and $150 million, not counting marketing dollars. So we're spending $100 million plus on most games, and they take up to 5 years to complete. And then it seems that budgets have doubled each generation, meaning that PS5 development budgets could hit $300 million. So with that, it's like, what are you building? What is the expectation? How are you going to get everything across, but still make it to where it's going to be profitable? He said also that these budgets are unsustainable if retail prices cannot be elastic. It's been $60 since he started in this business. I believe the last time the prices changed was like 2005, I believe, or 2006, when they went from $49.99 to $59.99. He says that since he started in the business, the cost of making games has gone up 10 times. So there's no elasticity on the price point. You have a huge volatility on the cost line, making the model much more difficult. And this generation, he thinks, is when it's going to come into a head and collide. Most recently, NBA 2K21 has come out. It's going to be on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. And it is the first game on the new system that is being priced at $70. There's talks that potentially this will be the new normal, and that we'll have this price hike for every game going forward. I'm personally kind of in the okay of this, but it's definitely like the elasticity, I think, is a big piece to drive home. Say a game like an indie game, what should that be priced at? Red Dead Redemption 2, which is way bigger of a game than The Last of Us Part 2. What's some good options here for the vast difference between game to game?
So subjective, but any change in the marketplace has the potential to make waves that could be detrimental for a lot of things and a lot of people. You know, a game can last for an hour to 30 hours. So like, what should you really realistically be paying for that? I don't know. I think with Sony and their first party titles, I would be down paying $70. Now, if you're talking about Battlefield game or some other franchise that we've gotten like the 20,000th iteration of, paying $70 for that, like, I don't know. Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I mean, holy crap, how many hours are in that? Too many hours. And what's the quality? Well, in my opinion, it's not the best quality ever. Like, I want to pay $70 for that, but how much time and effort was really spent into making that world? It's too big. I mean, you've mentioned it plenty of times. A lot of these games are just, there's too much in them for the experience that people are not going to play. I don't want to take the time to do all that. If you factor that in the cost, I mean, what does that really boil down to? Like a $30 game I could be buying? We need to rethink our priorities in a game. And I know it's all about fun and stuff, but we need to really prioritize, like, what are we getting? Like, I mean, would you pay $70 for Breakpoint? I wouldn't buy...
Oh, I did, actually.
So you bought $70 for Breakpoint?
Well, technically I spent more because I paid $40 for the game and I paid $40 for the season pass. So I spent $80.
My gosh.
I see the reason for it. I mean, they need to make up that money. There's a lot of content in there. Is it all good content? Not necessarily, but there's a lot of stuff to do, and that world is so huge. We had somebody that commented on our Facebook page when we posted about Ghost Recon Breakpoint. He said he loves Breakpoint, but that the world's not big enough. And that blows my mind because I just clocked in 55 hours into it, I believe, and I've covered 33% of the world. 33% in 55 hours. There's so much more of this world to see and explore that I haven't even tapped into yet. Just yesterday, I was playing a mission, and there was a freaking massive 2-kilometer long underground tunnel that was underneath the game world that I didn't know existed until I did a side mission that took me into this underground base. Like that game with what's in there, like should be charged more for it because there's so much content there. But one of the things that Shawn Layden mentioned here, instead of trying to spend 5, 6, 7 years, because I think this is what killed Breakpoint, is they spent a lot of time on this game trying to enhance all these features and add more, ended up hampering the gameplay experience. So instead of trying to throw more and more into something, let's instead focus on, what if you spend 2 to 3 years to make a 15, 20, 30-hour game, and then make another iteration of that game in 3 years. So in 6 years, you can make 2 games that are shorter experiences, but can be sold for $60 a piece and end up making $120 off of that person, or make one game that takes you 6 years and sell it for $60 and only make $60 off that person. I mean, yes, the player is not going to get as much game time in that one game, but you could kind of make some more money out of it because you're tightening up the experience. You're still giving them a lot of gameplay to play. They're able to play more games, which is, if you're a publishing company that's producing 10, 15 games, you open yourself up to selling more of your published titles by making games shorter. Look at Ubisoft. Every game that they bring out is like 100,000 hours long. Like you mentioned Assassin's Creed and all that stuff. Yeah. Well, nobody's going to play Assassin's Creed, Rainbow Six Siege, Ghost Recon Breakpoint, all of those games all in a year. They're going to pick one of those games, and that's going to be their game to play. But if each one of those games was half that time, they might pick up 2 or 3. And I think you'd get more money out of it at the end of the day, and you wouldn't have to rely on microtransactions to get that extra revenue.
PlayStation has created a culture for the more mature gamer, people, 25 and older, but mostly people who have money to spend like us. Like I would pay $70 for one of their games because I know what I'm going to get. It's more mature. It's something I like. Like, I have the money to buy that, really. But Assassin's Creed, if you rose that to 70, you're going to turn a lot of people into one-game gamers.
A lot of people I talk to that are, in our audience of the casual gamer are one-game people. That they play 1 or 2 games at a time, and once they finish that, they move on to something else. And they were like, "This is great because I can pay $60 for this game. It'll last me for 2 years, and then I'll get the next Assassin's Creed." Yeah, and I think the price hike is important for games like that. But I agree with this like elasticity. It's like not every game, and like you said, not every game should be that price. It gives them an excuse at this point because we're switching console generations to be able to transition the price point, because that when it comes out on PS4. If you want to buy it on PS4, it's still going to be $60. But if you want to buy on PS5, it's going to cost $70. And then eventually everybody's going to have a PS5, and then that's just going to be the new standard of price. Recently, Amazon brought out a game. Their first game actually was called Crucible, and it's a hero shooter kind of idea, third person. We've talked about it on the podcast not too long ago. And it came out 1.0. It did not do super well. This is the first time I've ever heard this. They brought it back into beta. So they're going back to the drawing board. The developer is going to regularly hop in a Crucible with the players to take feedback and suggestions, and there's a whole roadmap of improvement and fixes that are being addressed as well. So they're going to pull it from Steam. Anyone who claims on Steam before a certain day will have access to the closed beta, and then anyone who doesn't won't be able to play Crucible until it relaunches, although there'll be some opportunities to get back into it later on. So it's free to play, so there's no harm in claiming it, but ultimately they're going to use this closed beta group to improve the game and make it better. How long that's going to be, we don't know. But this is an example to me, I think, of how risky it is now to get into AAA development and to build out games. And I think why we're having concerns about quality in games.
I just want a good story. And, the world's big, great. The world's small, fine.
I like how Star Wars Squadrons, which is coming out later this year, they're pricing it at $40, which is crazy to me. But they're pricing it cheaper than a standard game, and it's got a story and stuff like that. So I'm anxious to see how it plays. But plays really well, like awesome. Like that's a good step in the right direction. They have that subscription service, which is another avenue to get people pulling into a platform. I definitely think it needs to be flexible because I mean, if you just put a veil over everything and say, hey, this is all $70 now, $70 for Ratchet and Clank, that might be a 20-hour experience. I don't know how I feel about that. But $70 for freaking Red Dead Redemption 3, honestly, Cyberpunk 2077, $70, I'm all about that. Like, that makes sense because it's going to be huge. I'm pretty certain that this is going to be the new standard for ultimately. I mean, I agree that they need to do something to get more money for these games if they're going to continue to make them this size. A lot of gamers want it, but I don't think it's going to be the end of the world if they cut down a game to 30 hours or 20 hours and release it at $60.
Yeah.
People will buy it if it's good.